Welcome back to Paranightmares, where the night whispers and we listen. If creepy tales and unsettling shadows are your kind of lullaby, you're in the right place. Before we descend into tonight's darkness, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're from and what time you're watching. After you finish the video, let us know which part made your skin crawl most. I'm watching, and I read everyone. The narrow dirt path stretched endlessly before me, swallowed by the thick fog that clung to the earth like a shroud. I'd been walking for hours, my boots crunching against the gravel, the only sound in a world that felt too still. My phone had died miles back, its battery drained by the cold, leaving me with nothing but a flickering lantern I'd found in my car's trunk. Its weak, amber glow barely pierced the mist, casting jagged shadows that danced along the trees lining the road. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. It started with the wind, a low, mournful howl that rose from the forest, curling around me like a voice calling my name. I stopped, my breath fogging in the chill air, and held the lantern higher. "Hello," I called, my voice trembling more than I'd care to admit. No answer, just the rustle of leaves, sharp and sudden, like something darting through the underbrush. I told myself it was a deer, maybe a fox, but the hairs on my neck stood up, and my gut twisted with the feeling I couldn't shake. I'd been driving home from a late shift at the diner when my car sputtered out on this godforsaken back road. No signal, no map, just me, the night, and a broken engine. I decided to walk, thinking I'd find a gas station or a house. That was hours ago. Now the road seemed to loop, the trees growing denser, the gnarled branches clawing at the sky. I hadn't seen a single light, not a car, not a soul, just the fog, thickening with every step. The rustling came again, closer this time. I swung the lantern around, its light catching the edge of something, pale, thin, vanishing into the mist before I could focus. My heart thudded against my ribs. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice cracking. Silence answered, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy, like the quiet before a storm breaks. I started walking faster, the lantern swinging in my grip, its flame flickering wildly. That's when I saw it, a shape in the fog ahead, tall, hunched, its silhouette wavering like smoke. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, just stood there watching me. I squinted, trying to make sense of it. A person, an animal. The lantern's light trembled in my shaking hand, and I took a step forward, then another. "Hey," I called, forcing bravado into my voice. "You lost too." The shape shifted, tilting its head, or what I assumed was its head. Then it stepped toward me, slow and deliberate, and the fog parted just enough for me to see. It wasn't human. Its limbs were too long, its body too thin, like a skeleton stretched beyond reason. Its face, if you could call it that, was a hollow blur, no eyes, no mouth, just a void that seemed to pull at the light. My lantern flared, then dimmed, as if the thing was drinking it dry. I stumbled back, a scream lodged in my chest. The air grew colder, my breath coming in sharp, painful gasps. I turned and ran, the lantern banging against my thigh. Its light barely a spark now. The path twisted under my feet, roots snagging at my boots, but I didn't stop. I could hear behind me soft, uneven steps, like it wasn't in a hurry, like it knew I couldn't escape. The forest pressed in, branches scraping my arms, tearing at my jacket. I didn't know where I was going, just that I had to get away. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I kept running until the ground dipped suddenly, and I fell, tumbling down a slope. The lantern slipped from my hand, rolling away, its flame snuffed out as it hit the dirt. I landed hard, pain shooting through my side, and scrambled to my knees, clawing at the earth. Darkness swallowed me. No moon, no stars, just the suffocating black of the night. I fumbled for my lighter, hands shaking as I flicked it on. The tiny flame cast a weak circle of light, enough to see the roots and rocks around me. And then I heard it, a low, guttural hum, vibrating through the ground. It wasn't the wind this time. It was closer, deliberate, circling me. I swung the lighter around, its flame trembling. Shadows shifted just beyond its reach, long and jagged, moving in ways shadows shouldn't. My mouth went dry, words failing me as I backed against a tree, its bark rough against my spine. The hum grew louder, splitting into whispers, dozens of them, overlapping, hissing my name. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't stop. It was inside my head, clawing at my thoughts. "Please," I whispered, though I didn't know who I was begging. The lighter slipped from my fingers, plunging me into darkness again. The whisper stopped, replaced by a silence so deep it hurt. Then a touch, cold, bony fingers brushing my shoulder. I jerked away, scrambling blindly, my hand scraping over dirt and leaves. Another touch, this time on my ankle, pulling me back. I kicked, thrashing, but it was like fighting smoke. I don't know how long I ran after that. Minutes, hours, time blurred into a haze of terror. My body moved on instinct, lungs screaming, until I stumbled onto a road. Not the dirt path, but asphalt, cracked and worn. Headlights pierced the dark, blinding me as a truck roared closer. I waved my arms, shouting, and it screeched to a stop. The driver, an older man with a grizzled beard, stared at me like I was a ghost. "You okay, kid?" he asked, voice rough. I couldn't answer, just climbed into the cab, trembling. He didn't ask again, just drove, the hum of the engine drowning out the echoes in my skull. I kept my eyes on the road, afraid to look back, afraid of what might be watching from the fog. When we reached town, I thanked him and stumbled to the diner, the only place open. The waitress gave me coffee, asked what happened, but I couldn't explain. How do you describe something you don't understand? I sat there until dawn, watching the sky lighten, the night's grip loosening. My car was towed later that day, the mechanic saying it was just a dead battery. But I know what I saw, what I felt. I don't drive that road anymore. I don't go out after dark if I can help it. And sometimes, when the wind howls just right, I swear I hear it again. That hum, those whispers, calling me back into the night. I'd been burning the midnight oil again, the last one in the office, as usual. The clock on the wall ticked to 11:47 p.m., its hands cutting through the silence like a knife. The hum of the vending machine in the break room was the only other sound, a faint drone that buzzed in my ears as I rubbed my temples. My eyes ached from staring at spreadsheets all day, and my body screamed for rest. Time to call it a night. I slung my bag over my shoulder, grabbed my keys, and stepped into the hallway, letting the office door click shut behind me. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered once, a quick stutter that made me pause. I glanced down the corridor. It stretched out before me, the linoleum gleaming under the harsh glow. But something felt off. The far end, where the exit sign should have been a short walk away, seemed swallowed by shadow. I shook my head, exhaustion. That's all it was. I started walking, my footsteps echoing louder than they should have, a hollow tap-tap-tap that bounced off the walls. Then the lights flickered again, longer this time, plunging the hallway into a heartbeat of darkness. When they snapped back on, the exit sign glowed red in the distance, but it hadn't gotten any closer. My stomach twisted. I quickened my pace, the echoes of my steps growing sharper, more insistent. Behind me, my office door was still visible, but it looked tiny, as if I'd already walked half a mile. That wasn't right. The hallway wasn't that long. A sound brushed against my ears, a whisper, soft and indistinct, like someone muttering just beyond the edge of hearing. I froze, my breath catching. "Hello?" My voice trembled, swallowed by the stillness. No answer, just the hum of the lights. I turned back to the exit and started jogging, the whispers trailing me, growing louder, overlapping into a chorus of hisses. My keys jingled in my pocket, a frantic rhythm matching my pulse. The hallway stretched on, impossibly long. Doors appeared on either side, more than I remembered, each one identical to my office's, frosted glass, metal frame, no nameplate. I grabbed a handle and twisted. Locked. Another locked too. Panic clawed at my throat. The lights flickered again, and the walls seemed to press in, the ceiling dipping lower. I could feel it now, eyes on me, heavy and unblinking, boring into my back. At the far end, beneath the exit sign, a figure stood. It was tall, too tall, its limbs stretched and bent at wrong angles, like a marionette with cut strings. Shadows cloaked its face, but I knew it was watching me. The whispers stopped, replaced by a single, clear word. Stay. It slithered through the air, cold and final. I skidded to a stop, my shoes squeaking against the floor. The figure didn't move, but the hallway did. The walls pulsed inward, the floor tilting beneath me. I stumbled, grasping a door handle for balance. It gave way this time, and I tumbled through, slamming it shut behind me. My chest heaved as I pressed my back against the wood, waiting for the sound of pursuit. Silence. I opened my eyes. I was back in my office. The clock read 11:47 p.m. My bag sat on the desk, my chair pushed back exactly as I'd left it. But the air was wrong thick, tinged with a sharp, sour smell, like charred hair. I glanced at the window. Beyond the glass was nothing, just a void, black and endless, no stars, no streetlights. My skin prickled. A knock rattled the door. Soft, tentative, then harder, insistent thud, thud, thud. I backed away, my mouth dry as dust. The handle jiggled, and the door creaked open an inch, revealing the hallway again, still stretching into infinity. The figure was closer now, its skeletal frame more defined, fingers tipped with jagged, blackened nails. It raised a hand, beckoning me. I lunged forward, shoving the door shut and twisting the lock. The knocking resumed, louder, shaking the frame. My hand shook as I fumbled for my phone. Dead. The screen black. The lights flickered, then died completely. In the dark, a new sound, a slow, deliberate scritch-scratch, like nails carving into wood. I clicked on my desk lamp, its weak glow barely piercing the shadows. The walls were covered in scratches, deep, angry gouges that hadn't been there before, and scrawled among them, over and over, was the word, stay. My breath hitched. The door burst open, with splintering, and the figure stepped inside. Its face was a writhing mass of shadow, but its eyes, God, its eyes were hollow, bottomless pits that sucked the light from the room. It reached for me, its breath a rancid gust that made my stomach churn. I screamed, scrambling backward. My foot caught on the chair, and I fell, crashing to the floor. The figure loomed, its claws inches from my face, and then it was gone. The lights blazed on, bright and steady. The walls were smooth, the door closed and intact. The clock ticked to 11:48 p.m. I lay there, panting, sweat soaking my shirt. A dream? A hallucination? I didn't care. I grabbed my bag and bolted, bursting into the hallway. It was normal now, the exit sign just steps away. I sprinted to it, flung open the stairwell door, and didn't stop until I was outside. The night air sharp against my skin. I quit the next day, found a new job, moved on. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I hear it. A faint whisper, a soft knock, and I wonder if it's still out there, waiting for me to stay. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth as I stood in the backyard of my childhood home, staring at the old oak tree that had haunted my dreams for years. The sun had slipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a bruised purple, streaked with thin clouds that seemed to bleed into the darkness. I'd returned to this rural patch of nowhere, miles from any town, surrounded by endless fields, to sort through the remnants of my parents' lives. They'd moved to the city a decade ago, leaving the house to me, but I hadn't set foot here since I was a teenager. Now, at 32, I was back, and the place felt both achingly familiar and unnervingly foreign. The oak stood alone in the yard, its gnarled branches twisting like skeletal fingers against the fading light. As a kid, I'd spent hours climbing it, hiding in a hollow at its base during games with friends. That hollow, a dark, jagged opening about 3 feet wide, had been my secret fortress, a place where I'd felt safe. But tonight it looked wrong. The tree seemed larger, its trunk swollen and blackened, as if it had grown in my absence, fed by something other than soil and rain. The wind was still, the field silent, and yet the air thrummed with a tension I couldn't place. I'd spent the day inside, sorting through boxes of old photos and my mother's faded journals, but something had pulled me out here as night fell. Maybe it was nostalgia, or maybe it was the house itself. Its creaking floorboards and musty smell stirring memories I'd rather forget. I zipped up my jacket against the chill and stepped closer to the tree, my boots sinking into the soft, loamy ground. The hollow gaped like a wound, its edges rough and splintered, and I felt a prickle of unease crawl up my spine. A sound broke the silence, a low, creaking groan, like wood bending under strain. It came from the tree, deep and resonant, vibrating through the ground. I froze, my breath catching. The groan came again, louder, more deliberate, as if something inside the trunk was shifting, settling. My heart kicked against my ribs. "Hello," I called, my voice thin and trembling. It was a stupid thing to do, but the silence was suffocating, pressing against my ears. No answer, just another groan, followed by a faint rustling, like dry leaves being crushed inside the hollow. I fumbled for my phone, switching on its flashlight. The beam was weak, barely piercing the darkness within the opening, but it caught a glimpse of something, pale, smooth, like a hand, retreating into the shadows before I could focus. My stomach lurched. I stepped back, the light shaking in my hand. It had to be an animal, a raccoon maybe, or a possum, but the shape had been too large, too deliberate. The rustling grew louder, more insistent, and the groaning shifted into a rhythmic thud, like a heartbeat pulsing through the earth. I should have run back to the house, locked the door, and called it a night. Instead, I stood there, rooted to the spot, my phone's beam trained on the hollow. The air grew colder, my breath fogging in front of me, and a faint mist began to curl out of the opening, swirling in the light like smoke. It smelled wrong, sour, metallic, like blood left to dry. "Who's there?" I whispered, barely audible. The thudding stopped abruptly, and the silence that followed was heavier than before, pressing against my chest. Then a voice answered, a low, raspy whisper that seemed to come from the tree itself, slithering through the air and into my bones. "You shouldn't have come back." My phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the ground, its light flickering out. Panic surged through me, hot and sharp, and I turned to run, but my legs felt heavy, as if the earth were pulling me down. The mist thickened, wrapping around my ankles, cold and clammy against my skin. I stumbled forward, glancing back at the tree. Something was emerging from the hollow, tall and thin, its limbs unnaturally long and bent, like branches twisted into a mockery of a human form. Its skin was pale and mottled, blending with the mist, and its face was a void, a dark blur where features should have been. But I felt its gaze, heavy and unblinking, boring into me. I reached the back porch, my hands fumbling with the doorknob. The thing didn't run, it glided, moving through the mist with a fluid grace that made my stomach churn. The groaning resumed, louder now, shaking the ground beneath me. I threw the door open and stumbled inside, slamming it shut and twisting the lock with trembling fingers. My chest heaved as I pressed my back against the wood, listening for any sign of pursuit. The groaning stopped, replaced by a soft scratching, like fingernails dragging across the door. It was slow, deliberate, circling the house, testing the windows, the walls, every weak point. I grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, clutching it tightly, though I knew it was useless against whatever was out there. The scratching moved to the windows, a slow scratch that set my teeth on edge. I sank to the floor, my back against the refrigerator, and waited, praying for dawn. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, time blurred in the haze of fear. The scratching eventually faded, and the house fell silent again. I didn't move until the first rays of sunlight crept through the curtains, painting the kitchen in soft gray. I peeked outside, my heart pounding, but the yard was empty. The tree stood as it always had, silent and still, the mist gone. The hollow looked smaller now, barely a foot wide, as if it had closed up overnight. But carved into the bark in jagged, uneven lines were the words, "You're mine." I packed my bag that morning, determined to leave and never return. But as I stepped outside, I noticed something else. footprints in soft earth, circling the house. They weren't human. Too long, too thin, with claw-like marks at the ends. They led from the tree to the porch and back again, over and over, as if whatever had been out there had spent the night pacing, waiting. I drove away, vowing to sell the place and bury the memory. But that night, in a motel 50 miles away, I woke to a familiar sound, a low, creaking groan, like wood bending under strain. I sat up, my heart racing, and saw it. A faint mist curling under the door, and the shadow of something tall and bent standing just outside. It wasn't tied to the tree. It had followed me. I didn't sleep after that. I checked out at dawn and kept driving, putting as much distance as I could between me and the house. But the groaning followed, faint at first, like a whisper on the wind. By the third night, it was louder, closer, coming from the walls of every place I stayed. I started noticing things, scratches on doors, smudges on windows that looked like long, thin fingerprints, and the dreams. Every night, I was back at the tree, standing before the hollow, watching that thing emerge, its void-like face inches from mine, whispering my name. I tried to research it, digging through old records about the property. The local library had a few crumbling files, yellowed newspaper clippings from decades ago. They mentioned the land cursed, some said, tied to disappearances that dated back to the 1800s. Farmers, travelers, even children, all vanishing near that tree. One article, barely legible, described a ritual gone wrong, something about binding a spirit to the oak to protect the land. But the spirit hadn't been what they thought. It was older, hungrier, and it didn't protect, it claimed. I burned through savings, moving from motel to motel, but it was no use. The thing was relentless. In a dingy room in Ohio, I found scratches on the ceiling, forming the same words, "You're mine." In a hostel in Pennsylvania, the groaning woke me, and I saw it standing at the foot of my bed, its limbs twitching like branches in a storm. I screamed, and it vanished, but the mist lingered, seeping into my lungs, making every breath taste of decay. By the 6th month, I was barely sleeping, living off coffee and fear. I'd started talking to it, pleading with it to leave me alone. Sometimes it answered, not in words, but in images that flashed in my mind. The tree, a hollow, and me, stepping inside, swallowed by darkness. I knew what it wanted. It wanted me to return, to give myself to the hollow, to become part of it. I'm writing this from a rented cabin in the middle of nowhere, the last place I can afford. The groaning is constant now, shaking the walls, and the mist seeps through every crack. Last night, I saw it clearer than ever, its body woven from roots and shadows, its face a swirling void that screamed my name. I don't know how much longer I can run. The tree is calling, and part of me, a small, broken part, wants to answer. I'd always preferred walking home after my shift at the bar. The quiet of the suburbs at midnight was a relief after hours of clinking glasses and loud chatter. My sneakers scuffed against the sidewalk, the only sound in a neighborhood of neatly trimmed lawns and darkened windows. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of cut grass and distant wood smoke. My apartment was only a mile away, and the familiar route past the park, through the cul-de-sacs, under the row of old streetlights, felt like a ritual, a way to unwind. Tonight, though, the silence was heavier. The streetlights, usually steady, flickered as I passed under them, their orange glow stuttering like a dying pulse. I glanced up at the first one, frowning. Just a loose bulb, I figured, or maybe a power surge. But as I kept walking, the next light flickered too, then the one after that, each one dimming in sync with my steps. I slowed, my breath visible in the cool air, and looked around. The street was empty, no cars, no late-night joggers, just me and the shadows stretching across the pavement. I pulled my jacket tighter and picked up my pace, my sneakers slapping against the concrete. The flickering grew more erratic, the lights buzzing faintly, like insects trapped in glass. I reached the corner of Elm Street, where a single streetlight stood taller than the rest, its bulb casting a wider pool of light. It flickered too, but slower, in a rhythm that felt deliberate. 3 short pulses, 1 long, then darkness. I stopped, my heart thudding. The darkness lasted a beat too long, and when the light snapped back on, I saw it. A figure stood at the edge of the light's reach, just beyond the circle of illumination. It was tall, hunched, its outline blurred like a smudge on a photograph. I couldn't make out its face, but its head was tilted, as if studying me. My mouth went dry. "Hey," I called, forcing my voice to stay steady. "You okay?" The figure didn't move. The light flickered again, 3 short, 1 long. And when it returned, the figure was closer, just inside the circle now. Its limbs were too long, its posture wrong, like a mannequin bent out of shape. I backed away, my pulse racing, and the light went out again. This time, the darkness lingered, and I heard it, a soft, shuffling step, closer than before. I turned and ran, my bag bouncing against my hip. The street lights along the street began to flicker in sequence, each one going dark as I approached, plunging me into brief pockets of blackness. The shuffling followed, steady and unhurried, always just behind me. I didn't dare look back. My apartment was close, 2 more streets, a quick turn, but the lights kept dying, and the shuffling grew louder, joined by a low, guttural hum that vibrated in my chest. I reached the park, a small square of grass and benches, and cut across it, hoping to lose whatever was following me. The streetlights here were farther apart, their light weaker, and the darkness between them felt alive, pressing against me. The hum grew louder, splitting into whispers, dozens of voices, overlapping, hissing words I couldn't make out. I stumbled over a root, catching myself against a bench, and risked a glance back. The figure was there, under the nearest streetlight, its head still tilted, its body swaying slightly, like a reed in the wind. The light flickered, 3 short, 1 long, and it was closer, its arms dangling, fingers brushing the ground. I bolted, my breath ragged, and made it to my street. My apartment building loomed ahead, its front door a beacon of safety. I fumbled for my keys. The hum now a deafening roar in my ears, and the final streetlight went out as I reached the steps. I jammed the key into the lock, my hands shaking, and threw the door open, slamming it behind me. The hum stopped abruptly, replaced by silence so deep it hurt. I leaned against the door, gasping, listening for any sign of pursuit. Nothing, just the faint buzz of the hallway's fluorescent lights. I climbed the stairs to my 3rd-floor apartment, locked the door, and checked every window, drawing the curtains tight. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind, made me jump. At dawn, I ventured outside, half expecting to find footprints or some sign of what I'd seen. The street was normal, the lights steady, the neighborhood waking up with the chatter of morning joggers and dog walkers. But I noticed something, a faint burn mark on the pavement under the tall streetlight, shaped like a hand, its fingers impossibly long. I tried to move on, to convince myself it was a trick of the mind, exhaustion from a long shift. But the flickering started again the next night, and the night after that. Each time I walked home, the lights pulsed, 3 short, 1 long, and the figure was there, closer each time. Its hum louder, its whispers clearer. It wasn't just following me anymore. It was waiting. I stopped walking home after that. I started taking cabs, even though it ate into my tips, or I'd beg a coworker to drive me. But the bar's late hours meant I couldn't always avoid the night, and the flickering followed me, not just on my street, but everywhere. Parking lot lights, neon signs, even the bulb in my apartment's hallway. Always the same rhythm, 3 short, 1 long, and always, just at the edge of the light, that figure, watching, waiting. I tried to research it, scouring the internet for anything about flickering lights and shadowy figures. Most of what I found was urban legends, ghosts, shadow people, old wives' tales about spirits tied to places of death. One forum mentioned a local story about my neighborhood, something about a man who died under that tall streetlight decades ago, hit by a car that never stopped. The details were vague, but the description of his silhouette, tall, hunched, with unnaturally long limbs, made my skin crawl. I contacted a local priest, Father Michael, who agreed to meet me at a coffee shop. He listened patiently as I spilled the story, my voice shaking as I described the figure, the hum, the whispers. He didn't laugh or dismiss me, but his face grew grim. "There are things that linger," he said. "Things that don't belong to this world anymore. They attach themselves to places or people, and they don't let go." "What does it want?" I asked. He shook his head. "Sometimes they just want to be seen. Sometimes they want more." He gave me a small silver cross and told me to keep it on me, to pray when the lights flickered. I wasn't religious, but I took it, clutching it like a lifeline. That night, I stayed late at the bar, helping clean up, delaying the inevitable. When I finally left, I took a cab, but the driver's dashboard lights flickered, 3 short, 1 long. I gripped the cross, muttering a prayer I barely remembered, and the flickering stopped. The driver didn't notice, but I saw it in the rearview mirror. The figure, standing on the sidewalk as we passed, its head tilted, watching. I started carrying the cross everywhere, but it wasn't enough. The figure was bolder now, appearing in broad daylight, always at the edge of my vision, vanishing when I turned to look. The whispers grew clearer, forming words. "See me. Know me." I stopped sleeping, my dreams filled with that rhythmic hum, the figure's void-like face looming closer. My co-workers noticed the bags under my eyes, the way I flinched at every flicker of light, but I couldn't tell them. They'd think I was crazy. I moved apartments, thinking distance might help. I rented a place across town, far from that streetlight. But the first night, as I unpacked, the ceiling light flickered, 3 short, 1 long. I froze, the cross digging into my palm. The hum started, low at first, then louder, shaking the walls. I ran to the window, yanking the curtains open, and there it was, standing under a streetlight across the street, its long fingers brushing the pavement. I called Father Michael again, begging for help. He came to my new place, sprinkling holy water and reciting prayers. The flickering stopped for a night, but it returned the next, stronger than ever. The figure was inside now, standing in the corner of my bedroom, its hum vibrating in my bones. I screamed, throwing the cross at it, but it dissolved into shadow, only to reappear closer, its whispers now a command. "Join me." I'm writing this from a motel, the last of my savings spent on a room with no windows. The lights here don't flicker, yet, but I hear the hum, faint in the walls. I've covered every outlet, every bulb, with tape, but the shadows move anyway, pooling in corners, stretching toward me. The cross is gone, lost in one of my panicked moves. I don't know what it wants or how to stop it. All I know is the rhythm, 3 short, 1 long, and the figure, always watching, always waiting. The night shift at the warehouse always left me drained, my muscles aching from hauling crates under the glare of fluorescent lights. By the time I clocked out at 2 a.m., the world outside was a ghost town, the streets of my small city hushed except for the occasional hum of a distant car. I liked cutting through the playground on my way home. It shaved 10 minutes off the walk, and the quiet was soothing after hours of forklift noise. The playground was a simple affair, a rusty slide, a set of swings, a climbing frame shaped like a castle. I'd passed through it 100 times, never thinking twice about the shadows swaying in the moonlight. Tonight, though, the air felt different, thicker, like it was pressing against my skin. The moon was full, casting a pale glow over the playground, making the slide gleam like polished bone. I zipped my hoodie and started across the grass, my work boots leaving faint prints in the dew. The swings creaked softly, swaying in a breeze I couldn't feel. I paused, frowning. The air was still, not a leaf stirring, yet the swings moved, slow and rhythmic, like someone had just pushed them. I shook it off and kept walking, my eyes on the far gate that led to my street. Then I heard it a giggle, high and childish, echoing from the climbing frame. I froze, my heart lurching. The playground was empty, shadows still. "Hello," I called, my voice louder than I intended, bouncing off the metal slide. The giggle came again, joined by another, then a third, a chorus of children's voices that sent a chill down my spine. I pulled out my flashlight, a heavy mag light I carried for the dark stretches of my walk, and swept a beam across the playground. The light caught the swings, still swaying, and the slide, its surface reflecting the beam like a mirror. Nothing else, no kids, no movement. Just the giggles, now coming from all directions, circling me. I took a step back, my boots sinking into the soft ground, and the giggles grew louder, sharper, almost mocking. "Who's there?" I said, my voice cracking. The giggles stopped abruptly, replaced by a single, clear whisper. "Play with us." It came from the climbing frame, where the shadows seemed darker, denser, pooling like liquid. I aimed the flashlight there, and for a split second, I saw them, small figures, maybe 4 or 5, crouched on the bars, their eyes glinting like coins in the light. Then they were gone, the shadows empty again. My hand shook as I backed toward the gate, the flashlight beam jittering across the playground. The swings moved faster now, chains rattling, and the slide seemed to hum, a low vibration I felt in my teeth. I turned to run, but the ground felt wrong, spongy, like it was pulling at my feet. The whispers started again, overlapping, chanting, "Play with us. Stay with us." I broke into a sprint, my breath ragged, and made it to the gate, slamming it shut behind me. I didn't stop running until I reached my apartment, locking the door and collapsing against it. My heart pounded as I listened for the giggles, the whispers, but all I heard was the hum of my fridge, the tick of the clock. I told myself it was exhaustion, maybe a prank by some kids hiding in the dark, but I couldn't shake the image of those glinting eyes, the way the shadows had moved. The next night, I took a different route, avoiding the playground. But I heard the giggles again, faint, carried on the wind. I started researching, digging into the town's history. An old article from the 1980s mentioned a fire at the playground. 3 kids had died, trapped in the climbing frame when it collapsed. The town rebuilt it, but the story lingered, whispered by locals who avoided the place after dark. I thought about moving, but my lease was ironclad, and I couldn't afford to break it. So I kept working, kept walking, but I never went near the playground again. Still, the giggles followed me, echoing in alleys, outside my window. One night, I woke to find the swings from the playground in my living room, swaying gently, though my apartment was on the 3rd floor. I stared at the swings, their chains creaking in the dim light of my apartment. My heart hammered, my mind scrambling for an explanation. Someone breaking in, a prank, anything rational. But the air was wrong, thick with the same heavy stillness I'd felt in the playground. I grabbed my flashlight and swung the beam around, half expecting to see those small figures crouched in the corners. The room was empty, but the swings kept moving, slow and deliberate, like they were waiting for someone to sit. I backed toward the door, my hand on the knob, but the giggles started again, coming from the walls, the ceiling, the floor. "Play with us," they whispered, the voices weaving together into a chorus that made my skin crawl. I yanked the door open and ran down the hall, not stopping until I was outside, the cold night air biting my lungs. The street was quiet, the streetlights steady, but I felt those eyes on me, glinting from the shadows. I stayed with a coworker for a few days, crashing on his couch, but the giggles followed. They were softer now, but always there, especially at night. I started seeing things, small handprints on my coffee mug, smudges on my windows that looked like tiny faces pressed against the glass. My coworker thought I was losing it, and maybe I was. I stopped going to work, called in sick, and spent my days researching, trying to understand what was happening. I found a local paranormal group online, a small team who investigated hauntings. They agreed to meet me at the playground, though they warned me they were skeptics. We went at midnight, armed with EMF meters and cameras. The swings were still, the slide silent, but as we approached the climbing frame, their equipment went wild, needles spiking, cameras glitching. One of them, a woman named Lisa, gasped and pointed to the ground. In the moonlight, we saw footprints, small, bare, circling the frame, fresh as if made moments ago. We didn't stay long. Lisa said the place was active, whatever that meant, and told me to stay away. But I couldn't. The whispers were in my head now, constant, urging me to return, play with us, stay with us. I went back alone the next night, carrying a lighter and a can of gasoline. If the playground was the source, I'd burn it down. The moment I stepped onto the grass, the giggles erupted, louder than ever, and the swings began to move, chains rattling like bones. I poured the gasoline around the climbing frame, my hands shaking, and flicked the lighter. But the flame wouldn't catch. The liquid seemed to sink into the ground, absorbed by something hungry. The whispers turned to screams, and the shadows on the frame moved, forming small, writhing shapes that reached for me. I ran, the screams chasing me, and didn't stop until I was miles away, collapsed in a gas station parking lot. The playground is still there, untouched. I've moved across the country, but the giggles follow, and sometimes, in the dead of night, I see the swings in my room, swaying, waiting. I'd missed the last bus home from the city. A stupid mistake after a late meeting that dragged on too long. The train station was my only option, a dimly lit platform on the edge of downtown, its benches empty except for a homeless man muttering to himself. The 1:15 a.m. train was the last one running, and I was the only passenger as I boarded, settling into a worn seat near the back. The car smelled of stale coffee and metal, the overhead lights flickering as the train lurched forward, rattling along the tracks. The windows showed nothing but darkness, the city lights fading as we moved into the suburbs, then beyond, into the rural stretches where stations were few and far between. I checked my phone. No signal, but that wasn't unusual out here. The train was quiet, save for the rhythmic clack of the wheels and the occasional creak of the car. I leaned back, closing my eyes, expecting to doze until my stop. Then the intercom crackled, a burst of static that made me jump. Next stop, nowhere, a voice said, low and gravelly, followed by a chuckle that cut off abruptly. I sat up, looking around. The car was still empty, the other seats shrouded in shadow. I figured it was a prank, some bored conductor messing around. But the train didn't slow, didn't stop. The windows remained black, no stations, no lights, just an endless void. I stood, gripping the seat for balance, and walked to the front of the car. The door to the next carriage was locked, the glass fogged over. I knocked, calling out, but no one answered. The intercom crackled again. "Stay where you are," the voice said, sharper now. "You're going where you belong." My stomach dropped. I tried my phone again, still no signal, and pounded on the door, shouting for the conductor. The train sped up, clacking growing frantic, the car shaking. The lights flickered, plunging the car into darkness for a moment, and when they returned, I wasn't alone. A figure sat at the far end, its back to me, its head bowed. It was tall, its shoulders broad, but its outline was wrong. Too sharp, too angular, like a silhouette cut from paper. I backed away, my heart racing, and the intercom crackled again. "Look at him," the voice said. "He's waiting." I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help it. The figure turned slowly, its head twisting at an impossible angle. Its face was blank, a smooth expanse of skin, no eyes, no mouth. I screamed, stumbling back, and the lights went out again. When they flickered on, the figure was closer, standing in the aisle, its blank face tilted toward me. The train lurched, throwing me to the floor, and the figure moved, its steps silent but deliberate, closing the distance. I scrambled to my feet, running to the back of the car, but the door there was locked too. The windows were black, reflecting my panicked face, and the figure's blank one behind me. The intercom laughed, a sound that burrowed into my skull, and the train sped faster, the clacking now a deafening roar. I was trapped, alone with that thing, heading somewhere I didn't want to go. I pressed myself against the door, my hand shaking as I tried the handle again, but it wouldn't budge. The figure stood motionless, its blank face a void that seemed to pull at the light. The train speed was unnatural now, the car vibrating so violently I could barely stand. The intercom crackled, the voice mocking. "No stops for you. Just us." I screamed for help, pounding on the door, but the sound was swallowed by the roar of the train. I turned, searching for something, anything, to defend myself. A fire extinguisher was mounted on the wall, and I yanked it free, clutching it like a weapon. The figure tilted its head, as if amused, and took a step closer. The lights flickered again, and it was suddenly halfway down the aisle, its long fingers brushing the seats. I swung the extinguisher, but it passed through the figure, which dissolved into a cloud of black smoke, only to reform closer, its blank face inches from mine. I bolted, running through the car, tripping over seats, my breath ragged. The windows showed nothing but darkness, no reflection, no world outside. The intercom kept talking, its voice weaving through my thoughts. "You can't leave. You're ours." I reached the back door again, hammering at it, but it was no use. The figure was behind me now, its presence a cold weight on my back. I turned, swinging the extinguisher again, and this time, it connected, the figure staggering back, its form flickering like a bad signal. The train screeched, a bone-rattling sound, and stopped abruptly, throwing me to the floor. The lights died, leaving me in total darkness. The silence was worse than the noise, heavy and suffocating. Then a new sound, a slow, deliberate step, coming from the front of the car. I crawled under a seat, holding my breath, clutching the extinguisher. The step stopped, and I felt it, the figure, standing over me, its blank face staring down through the dark. I don't know how I survived. The train started again, the lights flickering on, and the figure was gone. I stayed under the seat until dawn, when the train finally stopped at a station I didn't recognize. I stumbled out, the platform empty, the air cold and still. I've never taken a train since, but the intercom's voice follows me, whispering in the quiet moments, and sometimes, in the dark, I see that blank face, waiting for me to board again.